This video will look back over some of the key moments in the saga of the Stonehenge Tunnel plan. A modern-day druid who claims to be the reincarnation of King Arthur is suing the UK government over plans to build a huge road tunnel close to Stonehenge. Arthur Uther Pendragon, born John Timothy Rothwell in 1954, is a British eccentric who changed his name by deed poll after coming to believe he was the once and future king returned. Now, rather than taking up arms against invading Saxons, Pendragon has government-backed diggers in his sights. Transport Minister Grant Shapps recently revealed his support for the four-lane traffic tunnel very close to the UNESCO World Heritage Site, a proposal that has left eco-campaigners, archaeologists and neo-druids horrified. I may as well set out that this channel is not neutral on the issue either, and I view the plan as monstrous vandalism of one of not only England's but the world's most incredible sites. Stonehenge also has potentially many more secrets to yield, as one of my previous videos revealed, with the discovery of a gigantic sacred boundary near the ancient Durrington Wall settlement close to Woodhenge. Back to Mr. Pendragon, who has been involved in a number of direct action protests, including around charging to access Stonehenge, which he says is sacred to him and other so-called druids. This is despite the fact that Stonehenge was constructed by Neolithic builders thousands of years before druids existed. In any case, the Daily Mail reports that 66-year-old Mr. Pendragon from Salisbury, Wiltshire, has teamed up with archaeologists to launch a judicial review. The £1.7 billion tunnel plan is set to be built south of the current A303, which runs within a few hundred metres of the famous UNESCO World Heritage Site in Wiltshire. Senior Druid has claimed that the 2-mile tunnel will ruin the pagan pilgrimage site for winter solstice rituals, but he has only 6 weeks to put a legal fight together. Mr. Pendragon said archaeologists are also on board with him after they believe digging through the ground under the site will destroy artefacts not yet discovered. The former biker, who changed his name in 1986, said, "It is ridiculous, everyone is opposed to this. From a scientific view, archaeologists are opposed, as well as the spiritual people such as myself, so they are biting both ends. We are in discussions at the moment together. It's not a good thing for a number of reasons, and not only that, it's very surprising, as a lot of us, myself included, gave evidence at a public inquiry." He continued, "It ran for over a year. They had 6 planning inspectors. They took evidence, and at the same time as publishing the findings, the government decided to go ahead. The inquiry found that there will be irreparable damage to the World Heritage Site at Stonehenge. It is a site of universal value, so they have to do a job. They should be doing it properly. And what they are doing is penny pinching and building a tunnel that is too short. The trouble with the tunnel is at both ends. At the eastern corner it would destroy archaeology which hasn't even been discovered yet. It will also disturb aquaflows which will cause flooding. At the other end, at the western wall, which I am more concerned with, it will come out amongst burial grounds, and it will also cause light pollution at the exact point where the sun sets during the winter solstice, which is one of the reasons why Stonehenge was built." He went on to describe how he was deeply concerned that the remains of ancient people buried beneath the stone structure will be disturbed. The pagan said, "Of course Stonehenge is also a burial ground, and no one has given me any reassurances that any of the dead that will be disturbed will be reburied as close as possible to their original resting place. So for those reasons I am very opposed to the building of the tunnel, and am discussing with other people the likelihood of applying for a judicial review, which we have been given 6 weeks to do. There are a number of different campaigns and legal chains that we are thinking about. We are all thinking about it." He also expressed concerns at the costs involved and what his next move will be in fighting the plans. He said, "I have to think about costs. I'm not able to do it myself, but will back whoever does. It is quite likely to go to judicial review. There is no magic money tree, and I think there's a chance it may get kicked into the long grass because of financial constraints anyway. In the meantime, I'm going to oppose it, as are a number of others, through the legal system and if needs be through protests. Any geologist will tell you that chalk is ancient seabed, so there is no archaeology beneath it. But the fact that they want to dig through it into the portals at both ends within the World Heritage Site is a desecration." Mr. Pendragon concluded by saying, "It is not only a World Heritage Site, it is a place of pilgrimage for pagans all over the world. We go 4 times a year. It is mega and there is going to be outrage worldwide. They wouldn't do this to Salisbury Cathedral. This is not a parish church. It is the main pagan temple in Britain, in the world in fact." There is some fantastic news tonight about the preservation of one of our greatest archaeological treasures, Stonehenge. A previous video, link in the description, revealed how a legal campaign was challenging the outrageous decision of the UK government to build a dual carriageway road tunnel a hair's breadth from the stunning Neolithic monument. My video focused on a modern-day druid who claims to be the reincarnation of King Arthur, as you do, who was considering a legal challenge to the plan. Well, he, along with more mainstream campaigners and anyone who values our history, are sure to be celebrating tonight. For the High Court has seen sense and thrown out the scheme. In a judgment handed down this afternoon, the court quashed the Development Consent Order, DCO, which authorises the construction of the tunnel at Stonehenge, which was to replace the existing A303 road. Mr Justice Holgate allowed the judicial review by Save Stonehenge World Heritage Site Limited on the 30th of July 2021 on two grounds relating to the adequacy of the information before ministers and his consideration of alternatives. On the 12th of November 2020, the Secretary of State for Transport, Grant Shapps, had made a DCO under the Planning Act 2008 to authorise the construction of a new route 13 kilometres long for the A303 between Amesbury and Berwick Down, partly tunnellised and partly in a cutting. The tunnel would be 3.3 kilometres long under the Stonehenge part of the Stonehenge, Avebury and Associated Sites World Heritage Site, and the cutting would traverse the western part of the WHS before reaching a replacement junction at Longbarrow adjacent to the WHS. The Stonehenge part of the World Heritage Site contains 175 scheduled monuments, with other associated monuments outside it. Highways England had applied for the DCO, and their application was considered at a statutory 6-month examination in 2019. The examining authority considered that the scheme would cause substantial harm to the World Heritage Site and recommended that it be refused. The Secretary of State disagreed, in particular in relation to the level of harm, considering that the less than substantial harm would result and would be outweighed by the benefits of the scheme, including the removal of the existing surface level A303. The judicial review claim was brought on 5 grounds, and a rolled-up hearing considering whether permission to apply for judicial review should be granted and the merits of any judicial review at the same time. The claim was allowed on 2 grounds: that the Minister did not receive a précis of or any briefing on heritage impacts, where the examining authority agreed with Highways England but did not summarise in their report. He therefore could not form any conclusion about those heritage assets, whether in agreement or disagreement. Added to this, the examining authority and the Minister limited their concluded consideration of alternatives to whether an options appraisal had been carried out and whether there was information on alternatives. However, they did not go on to consider the relative merits of the scheme and alternatives, in particular extending the proposed tunnel farther westwards. Mr Justice Holgate considered it was irrational not to have drawn conclusions in relation to alternatives, particularly given that the third parties had raised them and the examining authority had addressed the information about them in its report. The judge held that the circumstances were wholly exceptional. In this case, the relative merits of the alternative tunnel options compared to the western cutting and portals were an obviously material consideration, which the Minister was required to assess and draw conclusions upon. The court rejected a series of other grounds which made up the challenge, but the ultimate decision was that the scheme be thrown out. Far be it for me to question the sage judgment of the court. This represents wonderful news and hopefully the preservation of the Stonehenge World Heritage Site for generations hence. The fact is that Stonehenge is yet to yield all its secrets, so as well as damaging what is already there, this scheme could have destroyed potential new archaeological discoveries before they have even been made. A job well done by the court and all those who have challenged this crazy plan. New legislation being considered by the UK's Conservative government could be a threat to Stonehenge, campaigners fear. A legal campaign which challenged the government's decision to build a dual carriageway road tunnel very close to the iconic Neolithic monument and World Heritage Site was successful in July. The High Court sided with demonstrators who opposed the planned 3.3 kilometre long tunnel under the monument, but suggestions that the government could seek to overturn court judgments it doesn't like, ostensibly over issues such as human rights rulings, have worried those who seek to protect Stonehenge. Justice Secretary Dominic Raab said an upcoming overhaul of the UK's Human Rights Act would include a mechanism to correct rulings by the European Court of Human Rights. Campaigners are concerned there could be mission creep and that the new powers could be used to overturn other contentious judgments. The Twitter account called Stonehenge Alliance, whose handle is @SaveStonehenge, tweeted, "We need to keep a close eye on dangerous Raab." Dominic Raab revealed that he is devising a mechanism to allow the government to introduce ad hoc legislation to correct court judgments that ministers believe are incorrect in capital letters. With a huge majority in the House of Commons, the government would be very likely to win such votes. I think Stonehenge Alliance is right to be concerned. Stonehenge still faces an uncertain future as a fresh consultation was launched by the UK government on its plans to build a road tunnel nearby. The latest twist came after Transport Secretary Grant Shapps received updated information on the scheme's carbon impact. National Highways has submitted a report on its calculation of operational and construction-linked CO2 emissions. The updated documents claim that the cumulative effect of greenhouse gas emissions from the scheme have decreased compared with previous estimates in 2018. National Highways measured the impact using the current version of the National Highways carbon tool. It put the decreases in construction carbon emissions down to a change in GHG greenhouse gas emission factors, and it explained lower road user emissions because of the projected uptake of electric vehicles up to 2050. The £1.7 billion scheme would involve the construction of a new 12.8 kilometre two-lane dual carriageway with a 3.2 kilometre tunnel for the A303 between Amesbury and Berwick Down in Wiltshire, very close to the Neolithic World Heritage Site. The High Court quashed the Transport Secretary's decision to allow development consent for the scheme last July. The decision was seen as a welcome victory for campaigners from the group Save Stonehenge World Heritage Site, but unfortunately the plans are still lingering. The scheme, if it goes ahead, is thought likely to cause considerable harm to the Stonehenge World Heritage Site, which includes the historic landscape around the iconic monument. Following the court's judgment that the development consent order was unlawful, Mr Shapps and the government are now redetermining the application. National Highways has named its preferred bidder for the £1.25 billion Stonehenge Tunnel scheme. It has chosen the Moore joint venture to construct the controversial tunnel and the main construction work for the A303 Amesbury to Berwick Down scheme at Stonehenge. The contract has been awarded despite the planning application for the scheme still pending redetermination by Secretary of State for Transport Grant Shapps after his decision to grant the development consent order against the advice of the Planning Inspectorate. The scheme was subsequently quashed by the High Court. But, undeterred by legal or procedural niceties, National Highways ploughed ahead regardless. The body said that to ensure programme timescales are maintained, it has selected the Moore joint venture, comprising FCC Construction, WeBuild and BMO Tunnelling, as its preferred contractor. Project Director Derek Parody said, "The announcement of a preferred bidder in no way preempts any decision, and once that is finalised and should the development consent order be granted, having a contractor in place will put us in the strongest possible position to deliver this transformational scheme and deliver the benefits we know it can." National Highways says the announcement followed a robust procurement process, a major part of which required shortlisted tenderers to develop their design solutions and demonstrate these as compliant with its requirements. The Moore joint venture has put together a consortium comprising Atkins, Jacobs and Spanish designer Sener as the design joint venture. Mr Parody also addressed the fact that the contract was handed to an overseas consortium. He said they will be making best use of considerable UK skills by using a range of local, regional and national suppliers and contractors to help them deliver the scheme. A statement released by the joint venture read, "For the companies that are part of the Moore JV, this project is a clear example of the development of sustainable, innovative infrastructures that not only provide traffic solutions but also improve people's quality of life. The proposed scheme includes 8 miles of dual carriageway, a tunnel at least 2 miles long beginning and ending within the World Heritage Site, closely following the existing A303 route, but a further 50 metres away from the Stonehenge monument, a new bypass to the north of the village of Winterbourne, Stoke, junctions with the A345 and A360 on either side of the World Heritage Site." The scheme remains unpopular with campaigners who comprise a broad swathe of concerns, from those worried about irreversible damage to the historic site to neo-pagans who see the area as sacred. That's it for this video. Don't forget to like, share and most importantly subscribe, and thank you for watching.